What's up, y'all? Coast to Coast Podcast here on InsideCarolina.com. I'm your host, Joey Powell. We're glad that you're with us this evening or morning or midday. Whenever it is that you're listening to this show, we're glad that you're listening to this show and we appreciate you being here. We're also grateful for our sponsors, Johnny T-Shirt and Congruity. And the folks that you are here to hear, Sean Moran and Sherrell McMillan are with me as always. I'm glad that they have joined us from their opposite coasts of the world to make this show what it is. Guys, since we last spoke, there's been quite a few dominoes that have, if not fallen, have leaned quite a bit with regard to UNC's prospects in the current recruiting class. So, Sherrell, I'm going to come to you first. It seems like the hottest one, at least with regard to numbers of stories and things flying around his recruitment, would be Niko Bundalo. And so, I want to also issue a mea culpa. We've been saying Bundalo the whole time on this show for basically since UNC offered him. So we want to own that. We have been squared away. We now know that it's Bundalo. But Sherrell, can you kind of give everybody a good reset on Niko and where his recruitment is and where it may go in the next short term?
I would say it's nearing the end. He took a visit to UNC and then subsequently canceled his visit to Kentucky, which he had pledged would be the final one that he would take. And then he came out with a top four or final four of UConn, Michigan State, Ohio State, and UNC. And so each school kind of has a unique pool for him. But I think in at least our minds, UConn seems to be maybe not gravitating towards him because they just got a commitment from Eric Rabi, who at one time was a Carolina recruit. And then Michigan State, just haven't heard a lot about Michigan State and him. So it appears to be kind of Ohio State and UNC of his Final Four that he's kind of really honing in on. And I think a decision really could come at any time. He said in the past he wants to do it before his senior season starts out at Prolific Prep in Napa, California, and that is coming soon. So we talked to his father, and you can read the story that was out over the weekend. We talked to him last week, and he said the same thing. You know, he wants to do it soon. He wants to get it over with and move on. So I think it's kind of a hurry up and wait deal. If you're a military child, that's what we were always told: hurry up and wait. So that's where things are right now with Bundalo. I think from a Carolina perspective, it's interesting because we've kind of ascertained that they want to take two guards potentially if they can get them, and a forward, and then AJ DeBansta is kind of on his own kind of tier by himself. So it does raise a situation where if Bundalo wants to go to UNC and says that to the staff, do they stop their pursuit of Caleb Wilson were that to happen? So I think those are questions that are going on kind of behind the scenes, and everybody's just trying to figure out their next steps. I'll be honest. I think a month ago we said give it a couple of weeks and we think some dominoes will fall. Some have, but not nearly as many as we thought. It does seem to be. I don't want to use the phrase dragging on, but it does seem to be going on a little bit longer than a lot of us expected. I thought by this week, the final week in October, that or the next to final week in October, that most of these guys will be done.
And you mentioned Reeby, committing to UConn. There's obviously another tie for UNC and UConn, specifically around Braylon Mullins. His final three being Indiana, North Carolina, and Connecticut. Anything else you want to share about that? I know he's announcing this coming week.
Yeah, I don't think Carolina fans need to worry about watching the announcement.
All right, folks, you heard it here. You know what that means. Take that as you wish. But again, that's kind of the most recent, as Sherrell likes to say, snapshot of this particular date and time as to where things stand with North Carolina's major recruiting prospects. Sherrell, what's next? Right? Usually, after dominoes start falling, there's a reset, and the staff kind of reassesses and determines what next step forward, what next steps forward may be. What do you feel like is next for this staff regarding dominoes falling in those particular areas you mentioned a few minutes ago?
I think it's one of those situations where they've kind of made their arguments, and I think you're not going to see them going out recruiting a bunch anymore once the season really gets started. They're down to like a Final Four, is what we called it in a post that we put out Thursday or Friday, which is the Bansta, Bundalo, Caleb Wilson, and Isaiah Dennis. And they're just kind of waiting to see what's going to happen with those guys. It's not to say they're not going to recruit them at all, But I think it comes to a point where it's like, all right, you've heard all the pitches. We talked NIL. We've talked about what we might expect from you. Everything's been discussed, so it's just up to you to make a decision. And I think that's where they are with pretty much all four of those guys. It's like, all right, it's the ball's in your court, so to speak. So Caleb Wilson did not go to Georgia Tech this weekend as originally planned. His family said that visit was postponed just because they are from Atlanta. They can go anytime they want. And he kind of needed a break from just being out on the road and games and visits and all that good stuff. We were told that he is thinking about taking a visit this coming weekend. We don't know to where, though. I think you can surmise if you really dig into his recruitment, but that hasn't been announced or finalized or anything. And after that, I do think his timeline is going to speed up, and I think you'll see him probably make a decision here in the next month or so. That's not a report. That's not source. That's just my opinion, based upon if you've taken all your visits and you've seen all the schools you wanted to see and you've worked through all the details and all that good stuff. Kind of what are you waiting for? And I think we'll see that with some of the other guys who have talked about waiting into the spring.
Well, as y'all have said, that's kind of the nice little bow tied up package that we can give for you. Um, Again, as more dominoes fall, and we anticipate that they will very shortly, pay attention. I see we'll be all over top of it. Hey, if you're listening to this show and you're not a premium subscriber, go ahead and make that happen. There's a lot of things swirling right now. There's a lot of stuff around UNC's major sports programs right now that you probably want to pay attention to, and basketball is about to tip off. So if you want to get that kind of first information first, and you want to be on the cutting edge of anything that happens around Carolina basketball, you need to be a premium subscriber. Also, if you're not a premium subscriber, don't share premium stuff out in the ether. Sherrell works really hard on this stuff. Greg and all the other writers do the same thing. Don't try not to rip off what they're doing. We know it's good information. We know that you're probably wanting to share that with your friends or whatever. Just try to respect the code. Man, got to have a code, and we have a code here on the Coast to Coast podcast. Something else that I try to live by is that if you need good UNC gear, go to Johnny T-shirt. East Franklin Street, Chapel Hill, best selection around. I've already seen some of the UNC basketball stuff that's being released at Johnny T. I'm specifically a little bit of a Nike guy. I think I speak for Sherrell when he is a large bit of a Nike guy because he would wear all Nike all the time if you let him. I'm just speaking for this part of the show. Go to Johnny T-shirt. Check out the gear that they have. If you're not a Nike person, they have other brands for you. But I'm telling you right now, they're starting to get in stuff for basketball season, which means new looks, new types of stuff, a little heavier stuff because it's going to be colder outside. Make that happen. Use your premium discount if you're a premium subscriber. Get that extra 10% off. Johnny T-shirt is where you need to go. If they don't have it, you don't need it. Johnny T-shirt, we appreciate their loyalty and support of this here program and want you guys to support them too. I'm going to pause real quick. If you're listening to the audio section, there will be a national advertisement dropped in right here. You can turn it down. You can ignore it, whatever. We'll be right back on the video portion and the audio portion. Talk a little bit about, oh my God, guys, a preseason game happened. It was on TV. We'll be right back on the Coast to Coast podcast here on InsideCarolina.com. Coast to Coast here with you. We are talking about UNC basketball, recruiting, everything around the program. And guys, since we last dropped an episode of this here show, the Tar Heels actually had what used to be known as a secret scrimmage, and then they weren't secret anymore. And then they were just like, screw it, let's turn this into an opportunity to raise some money for a good cause. And they did this exhibition / preseason game in Memphis against Memphis to raise money for St. Jude's Children's Hospital. Big fan of the St. Jude mission, understanding what they do to help families as their children are facing incredibly tough treatments for cancer. And they try to shoulder most of the costs so families can just really focus on their kids. So UNC was a part of that against Memphis this past week. Sean, I'm coming to you first. I hope that you are prepared, sir. What I'd like to do is I'm going to give you guys some overreactions from this past week's game against Memphis. I know that we here on the show always try to tell people to don't be a prisoner of the moment. Temper what you see. It is just one game. More importantly, it was one game that didn't count in October. Oh, and UNC did it without their starting off guard, returning ACC Player of the Year, conference leading scorer, and they also missed a rotation man in Ty Claude. Sean, I'm coming to you first with one of the overreactions that I saw. Seth Trimble comes out, just absolutely balls out of his mind, drops 33, and now everybody swears to God he's going to be ACC leading scorer or ACC MVP or whatever. Again, I'm stretching this as a bit of an overreaction, but you did kind of see some folks getting swept into it in the moment. I'm not judging them. Everybody's been waiting for basketball. Not been a lot of positivity around the football program, so I get it. I'm not slapping the hands of anybody who was excited about seeing Seth go for 33. But again, we're trying to kind of react appropriately to the overreaction. So, Sean, we'll put it at your feet, man. How do you react to the overreaction that came from Seth Trimble absolutely lighting Memphis up last week?
Well, I think it verified everything that we had been hearing from various sources across, who had watched practice, had seen different pieces of the game, blue, white, etc. In terms of Seth Trimble's name has always come up. So I thought it was a great game. Obviously, scoring 33 points. I don't think anybody expected that. Not something that we're going to expect to continue, especially with RJ Davis comes back. But at the same time, it shows that he has the potential to continue to take that leap. I think we always love to see the freshman to sophomore year jump. But also, I think for him, especially entering his name into the portal and coming back, he still has a lot of room to show what he can be. And it's tough at UNC with the guard situation, so many talented guards around him of trying to carve out that niche outside of just being a strong defender. So I think they're going to need, capable and strong scorers. And I think for me, obviously he was doing, did a lot of his damage inside the paint, attacking the basket. Love the corner three that he had. Really, no hesitation on that. And I think that's really going to be the key. He shot a high percentage last year, but on very minimal attempts, but struggled during ACC play. And keep coming back to, the more that you can have teams respect you, talking about Trimble and Cadeau from the 3-point line is just going to open things up for everybody else. So I think it was, to me, the biggest takeaway was with RJ not playing, I think was great for the team of everybody being able to do a little more than necessary. So knock on wood, whatever reason he does get hurt or foul trouble, I think people have the confidence of being able to step up. But now I think Seth Trimble showing what he can do, whether it's the starting spot or coming off the bench, whatever that may be, just, UNC can count on him as a junior for this team.
Sherrell, I'm going to ask you point blank. Does Hubert Davis now have to start Seth Trimble?
Ooh, that's tough. I think if one of the bedrocks of your program is you have to earn it, and guys who have been through the program and who have kind of been forged in the fire, so to speak, if those guys start the natural progression, as Sean said, from kind of freshman, you take a jump to sophomore, and now you appear to take a jump as a junior. I think if all those ideals that you talk about with Carolina basketball, even in this new day and age, if you want those to remain true and not ring hollow, then you probably do have to start him because he's earned it. I mean, again, it was an exhibition game, but he's done everything that they've asked of him over the last couple of years. Started off as a defensive guy, come in, be the backup point guard for a few minutes. He did that. Last year, he was the clear sixth man, come in, when Cadeau maybe wasn't playing as well or RJ needed a spell, come in and keep things settled and not be a net negative. He did that. This offseason, once he decided to come back, the challenge was, well, you can't not shoot when you're wide open like you chose to do sometimes last year, and you have to be more aggressive because this isn't what we're seeing on the court, isn't who you are. And so he's answered that call thus far through all the practices in the summer and then the exhibition. So again, I think you have to, if you want your message of what the Carolina program is, I think initially you have to reward his hard work and his improvement over the last couple of off seasons, as opposed to, and there's nothing wrong with starting freshmen. And I know everybody wants the freshmen to start, but Carolina has a certain way that they've done things for the better part of 70 years now. And that stuff over the course of time has proven that it's worked. So we know that Hubert Davis believes in that. So I think if you kind of know what he believes in and you take all the reports from the summer and you take his comments from ACC Media Day and then how Trimble played, I think you kind of come to a natural conclusion, at least for the first part of the season. Again, even with basketball, even with the games themselves, they are just snapshots. They are moments in time. They are not uh, one game doesn't mean everything, and everything doesn't mean one game, if that makes any sense. So I think that's what people have to remind themselves. Even if Seth starts the first game of the season, doesn't mean he's going to be the starter for the next 36 games. He could be for sure. So I think just at this moment in this snapshot, the answer is yes. A very long-winded kind of bloviating way to say yes.
I get all hot and bothered when you get philosophical anyway, so I appreciate that. But I mean, both of you guys mentioned that the thing was he needed to get more aggressive, and the guy that I saw against Memphis was absolutely coming for them corners, and the dude wanted, like, he was just ruthless aggression was emanating from him from the moment that ball was tipped.
He was your favorite animal, correct?
He had a little bit of K9 in him. That is absolutely true, and I appreciate you calling that out. Let's go to another overreaction. 21 turnovers, and we've said on this show. I think I said it on the last show, and I know I mentioned it on X, formerly known as Twitter, the other night, that North Carolina, with this increase in tempo, is going to absolutely have a higher turnover rate, at least for the early part of the season until they get comfortable being at a higher speed. But, and Sherrell, I'll flip it to you this time first. Turnovers are going to kill this team. Like, I think, the same negative Nellies that, or at least people that are predisposed to look at things negatively. I think that was the thing that jumped out at them from the game against Memphis, was that North Carolina turned the ball over entirely too much, whether it was because of pace or whether it was in the half court. Either way, that was kind of a red flag. So, Sherrell, react to the overreaction that turnovers are going to kill North Carolina.
There could be a problem, but I think that's okay. I think Ben, again, we were talking offline. I think the game was charted at 85 possessions. Now, obviously, plus 20 is too many, but if you're going to play that higher tempo to make up for some of your perceived deficits in the post, and to accentuate the strengths of your team, which you've seen is pretty much the 1 through the 3, then you're going to play a more up-tempo game, which will naturally kind of lend itself to more turnovers. So I think, again, 20 plus is way too many. But I do think they'll more than likely have more than last year because they're going to have more possessions, and just naturally, you would think there'll be more turnovers. So it's not a worry yet, especially because RJ Davis didn't play. There were times where it was just kind of Trimble and Davis were the only two people on the court who could really handle the ball at the moment. So once you have three of those guys, that takes away maybe a couple of turnovers, and then I think once Ian Jackson and Drake Powell get more comfortable, you've got five guys you feel decently comfortable with handling the ball, and that's not always been the case over the last few years. So I would say that's a bit of a I'm not with that overreaction just because of the tempo and because of RJ Davis didn't play.
Sean, I know that you may or may not have caught the vapors when you saw the number of possessions in that game. Are you worried, or let me rephrase that? Do you think that North Carolina looked the way you expected them to look, knowing they were going to get 85 possessions, or do you feel like, that was probably a little ragged? How do you feel having looked at it and then knowing what Sherrell said about how many possessions they had over the course of the game?
I think initially was surprised to see that number of possessions, and looking back at last year as well as some of the teams that were in the top 10. I think in terms of that, I was probably expecting a little bit more in terms of with the dribble moving a little quicker up the court. I know there were ones which got me excited was when they're passing it up real quickly, obviously getting easier looks. Part of it was ragged, especially when you had other guys outside of Cadeau and Trimble handling the ball, whether it was from a turnover into a early possession, or for whatever reason, just getting the ball on the break. So I think that will be eliminated, especially as the season goes on, in terms of who you want controlling the ball in that tempo. But yeah, it definitely did look ragged of sorts, but I think they're going to be growing pains and aren't going to be sorted out really until conference play across the board, whether it is turnovers, the rebounding issues, etc. So there's still going to be some of the pains that we saw against Memphis. They're going to continue at least for a little bit, but it's going to be how long do they continue? Is it a season-long thing that there's no fix, or like issues we've seen in the past, can they be rectified with a a focus on them? But I do think come come the Kansas game, there's certainly going to be some things that we saw in Memphis that are now out, that we're talking about again.
Other thing I'll ask, Sean, I'll stay with you here. I saw some folks that were a little annoyed that North Carolina didn't put Memphis away, and I think that's to be expected because I think there were times last year that North Carolina did not step on their opponent's throats. There definitely were 2 seasons ago, so I can understand the scar tissue there and the inclination of the fan base to kind of want to get mad at that. Like that seems normal to me. What's your reaction to the fact that some folks seem to throw their hands up in the air? North Carolina didn't just mash Memphis out and run away and hide.
Well, I think one, just before going to that, they were going into the down at the half. They got down bigger in the first half, so I think being able to work back to get it within striking distance, going into the half, and then coming out of the into that second half and hitting them pretty hard was probably one of my bigger takeaways. But obviously, when you're up, what they were, you want to put them away. You don't want to have the team, especially on the road, get momentum. That's what we saw. General frustration when you're not putting teams away, especially when it does seem like you're playing the prevent D, a little bit of stall ball, which that to be fair is what we've seen a lot over the past few years. But at the same time, I think coming when it did right now, I think it's a good teaching moment and something to work. You're not going to be perfect in an exhibition game, especially with this team and all the change that has occurred. So I'm fine with it happening now, and hopefully it's something to learn from of how do you keep maybe not the foot all the way on the gas, but you can't let a team get themselves back in because that's what we really saw 2 years ago. They'd be up 5 to 9 points on the road, controlling the game for 36 minutes, and then the last 4 to 5 were disasters, and they're taking losses that didn't happen last year. So I think it will be a thing that everybody is watching. I'm not going to overreact because of what happened against Memphis. I think it's a good teaching point in terms of when it happened. But with RJ and with Cadeau, as well as Trimble being able to shoot free throws and get to the basket, they should still stay aggressive while also working the clock to an extent.
Sherrell, how much does RJ Davis change a situation where you feel like North Carolina's letting somebody back into it?
I would say a decent amount because he is kind of the closer. I mean, that's his role. That's what he did. I mean, you think back to the Miami game, all those threes. He did so much for the team. So, I mean, I think when I go back to it, I think you think more about a closing lineup than you do specifically as RJ Davis is like the closer himself. And I think he is a piece of that unit. When you have probably Trimble on the court, you probably have someone like Drake Powell on the court. You definitely have Cadeau on the court, where you have multiple ball handlers. Then you put RJ Davis in a situation where it's like, okay, all you need to do is get buckets. And we've seen that when he's in that situation, he doesn't have to worry about running offense. He doesn't have to be the primary defender. He can really just explode and become, kind of go nuclear, so to speak. So I think that is the way I look at it more than anything is like he fits in with that closing lineup more than he himself is the specific closer. And without him in that closing lineup, then you're missing a little bit and it doesn't feel I guess it didn't feel as strong. Obviously he's the ACC reigning player of the year, so that's probably why.
It always says something too when you've got a guy who's been in school 4 years and has seen some stuff, right? Like the fact that he can put himself on the ball if need be in those situations. And sure, like you said, he's got a little bit of a clutch gene. Shout out to Skip Bayless. I think there's something to everything you just said, and then you also throw in the fact of how many times has he seen this as a veteran. All right, boys, give me each one of your favorite overreactions from social media or that you may have heard colloquially after UNC Memphis. Sure, I'll go first.
I think I saw where Cadeau was going to like challenge for the single season assist record or the assist per game record. Mm-hmm. And at first I was like, come on, get out of here. And then I'm like, I mean, he had 13 and they were playing that tempo again without RJ Davis, right. Someone who's going to make everything easier for everybody else because of what he can do. Yep. So, I mean, I know we're not doing the over under show, but when I saw 8 assists a game, I was like, that maybe I know it. I don't know if it's ever happened. Kendall probably did it at one point, but I think Cadeau's assists and the number he can put up was mine. That I was like, that might be possible.
That feels like one of those stats where we could be like, oh, that's an aberration. Oh, there's no way he can maintain this. And then all of a sudden it's like late December and he's still doing it. And I'm like, oh, wow, this is a thing. Sean, give me your favorite.
Although, well, yeah, real quick on Cadeau. I mean, I think last year, if we went back to this time, we were aggressive. Or at least I was aggressive in terms of the assist percentage and probably number of assists per game last year. But once again, I think also a reason we were so excited for him coming on last year was the opportunity to have that year under his belt instead of playing in high school, and now a much more seasoned player compared to players who were in the 20, his teammates of Powell and Ian Jackson. So it'll be interesting to watch, but I think having that season under his belt, maybe it surpasses what our expectations are this year after last year. But in terms of my overreaction, probably goes to Cade Tyson. I think in some instances it was maybe the worst game that you would want somebody to watch Cade play when you haven't seen him before, going against Memphis. A lot of new players, but very athletic, strong and physical, and that was the type of team he struggled against last year, and kind of at a different level. Middle Tennessee State was one example. Drake, another example in that Missouri Valley Conference. So that was a perfect recipe for him to struggle. But at the same time, I think can maybe better set the barometer for expectations, given I think still a lot expected of him, but he's still going to take time to get up to that high major speed, in my opinion. And I think when it comes to shooting, he he does need a little bit of time to get off a clean look, and I think he struggled with that against Memphis. Some length, athleticism, which he will see going forward, but at the same time, I think he will be able to adjust. He's not going to be shooting 46%, 15 points per game, but I do think you don't have to worry as much from that first outing. And especially once again with RJ back, I think there are situations they can put him in. Probably don't want him handling the ball on the fast break unless it's a one-on-none, easy dunk in front of him. But I think there are concerns around him and that athleticism from the wing. But at the same time, I think just a good barometer to set going forward, and some things for him to work on to be able to get some better looks.
Yeah, I'd almost got through the entire show without mentioning Cade Tyson, and that was something we were watching it. You're like, all right, is this a real thing? Is this going to be an issue for him? But I think you were pretty succinct in breaking down why his game probably will take a little bit to catch up. But I don't think that his shooting's gone away, and he still made two very aggressive baseline moves that I think will be quite useful for this team.
Well, even he had the ball, came off his screen, was driving with his right hand. Last year, that might have been a pull-up jumper. This year, that turned into that assist to Withers. So once again, I think he's able to process. But once again, the speed of the game is going to be a little different in terms of what he can and can't do. But if he's able to still react and make the right plays, when we're talking about turnovers, he had 4. He should be having 0 to 1 per game, given what he's asked to do with it. So I think that'll be a big thing, especially in that step increased level of play.
Yeah, I mean that's a speed of the game thing, as you alluded. So, all right, guys. Sherrell, you may have been okey doked a little bit, but we are going to play some over under tonight. Do a little over under for our preseason numbers here. I've never been very punitive on coming back and measuring you guys because at the end of the season, nobody wants to hear what we thought. But I do think some of these prompts may be good conversation and maybe stuff to make some of our listeners think or look for over the course of the year. So I'm going to throw some of these at you. I'm going to give you guys a chance to say over or under. I hope to God you don't agree on most of them like you have in the past. But if you feel like you want to give some commentary about each one, feel free. But we'll start right here in kind of in the phase of what we mentioned earlier with Seth Trimble's performance in Memphis. Seth Trimble will average 14.5 points per game. Sherrell, over or under?
Yeah, under. I don't really need to elaborate. I don't think.
All right, Sean.
Under last year, 14.5 was Armando Bacot, the second leading scorer. So hopefully he definitely has some games over 14, but not going to definitely hammer in the under on that one.
I mean, I didn't think you needed to break out any weapons to begin with, but sir, if you feel so moved, feel free. All right. Here's one for you. R.J. Davis will win ACC Player of the Week 3.5 times. Sean.
That's a good one. I'm going to go under on that. I think he will win Player of the Week, contend for Player of the Year, but that's a lot. There's a lot of. It'll be interesting to see how the ball's spread. He's going to still be the leading scorer and hopefully average, close to what he did last year. But I'm gonna go on the under on that just because that's a lot to ask.
All right. Sherrell.
I'll go over because there'll probably be a couple of weeks where he has a 22-point game and a 25-point game on wicket efficiency, and maybe one of these preseason weeks or one of the weeks before conference season starts, because they still give it out then too, correct? Yeah. So I'll go over. I think he'll do enough.
I just hope that somebody will take Cooper Flagg's name off of it because I'm fairly certain he's going to get it for the entire month of November and December. So I don't even know if they'll allow poor old RJ to get any awards this year. Sorry, I'm being petty. I love the fact that you guys are already disagreeing on one. All right, here's one for you. Sure, we're going to stay here. Jalen Washington will average 18.5 points plus rebounds per game.
Ooh, 18.5 points and rebounds per game.
Mm-hmm.
So 10 points, 8 rebounds, or 12.6 rebounds. However
I'm going to make the math.
Oh man, that's tough. That's a good one, Joey. I'm still going to go under. Just because I think it's going to be a team rebounding deal. So I think 5 or 6 rebounds a game is probably the most you'll get out of him. Again, because I think Vin Allen Lubin will be in the rotation. Jalen Withers, his rebound percentage has always been really good when he's on the court. He'll eat up some of those. RJ Davis is a great rebounder for a guard. So I think more than the points, so there's not going to be enough rebounds to go around. And I can't foresee him scoring more than like 12 points a game. So I think more like 11 and 5 would be really good for Jalen Washington. So I'm going to go under.
I actually had an RJ rebound stat, but I didn't want to have too much RJ conversation. I've seen Sean over here. If you guys are watching us on the YouTube channel, Sean's been over here doing back of napkin math while Sherrell was giving his answers. So, Sean, go ahead, man. Over under 18.5.
I did the Galifianakis meme where he's like staring at all the numbers.
All the stats,
yeah.
The mind says bet the under and feel pretty confident on that, but I'm going to go with the over on that. Look, I think there's a lot of questions around the bigs, and I think Hubert is going to roll with maybe whoever's playing well in that first half. They're going to get more of the time, but if he get from a defensive end, if he's providing somewhat of an anchor and the agility has improved, I think we're going to see his offensive ability start to come out. And once again, from a rebounding perspective, I know we didn't really hit on that, but they're getting crushed on the offensive boards, and he's going to be the one that's going to be tasked with ideally switching that around. So I'm going to go with the heart and go over and hope we're watching a great Jalen Washington junior season, since really in my mind this is more of a freshman to sophomore year elite than the true sophomore to junior year. But gonna go with the over on this one.
I can rock with that rationale too. And plus, guys, we've already seen Hubert Davis's willingness to run some stagger action for the 5-man, which if you'd have told me at any point in my life that I would see some sort of design play where there's multiple screens designed to give UNC's post player a wide open look at 3 that he converts, I would have told you that you were absolutely really, 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 really high. But we've seen hell freeze over. So
and we know that was your favorite play of the game, which was a great one to call out. 2, the over will probably get ruined just by there's going to be probably a few games where maybe it's like 3-2 and there's foul. Yeah. There's going to be some things that happen that definitely bring it down. But as I said, we'll have some fun and hope it's over.
Sherrell, I think Sean just said variance without saying variance, but gonna move on to our next one here. Sean, we'll stay here with you on this one. Drake Powell and Ian Jackson will both average 20.5 minutes per game. I don't know if that maths from the available 200 that they have to go around amongst the team, but I'm just throwing that out there that Drake Powell and Ian Jackson will average 20.5 minutes per game.
Well, one, I got to give you credit. These are some pretty good, kind of off the beaten path over unders, and definitely ones that are challenging. So I'm going to go under on this just because I think two very talented players in different aspects. I always was under the thing that, hey, I think Ian Jackson is going to be the second leading scorer. It's obvious that both of them still need to get their feet under them, and this is not high school. It's not AAU, where it's going to be a lot easier to be a little more comfortable. Things are going to be tighter around the court, across everything. So I'm going to go under just because I do think it'll take a little bit of time, and similar to Jalen Washington, there could be some ups and downs, but I would say towards, once we get into 2025 and into, the true part of conference play, I would expect that to be almost a baseline around that number, if not over. But in terms of the season average, I'm going to go slightly under in terms of that one.
All right. Sherrell, same question. The number was 20.5.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go over because I think it's similar to Sean's point, but as they develop, I think you're just going to see them get more and more minutes. And I think Hubert Davis has done a good job in the past few years of kind of cutting off the rotation at a certain point and only going 7 or 8 deep, depending upon kind of how he feels. And I think both those guys are just way too talented to not at some point break through into that top 7 or 8. And if you're in that top 7 or 8, I think the minute distribution they'll both get at least 13 minutes a game, I would imagine, come December and January, and that puts us over the top, correct?
That would do it.
Yeah. So that's my simple rationale. Is just that it's not breaking, but they're super talented, and I think they'll eventually break through. And Hubert Davis tends to find his guys, and he sticks with 7 or 8. So I think they'll be in that rotation.
All right. The last couple we're going to throw at you guys are going to be team-based, all right? So, Sherrell, staying with you, trying to do the SNCC like we usually do. UNC will average 84.5 points per game this season.
I'm going over or under, correct?
Over under.
Yeah, I'm gonna go right over, like 85. I think is a pretty good number.
I think they were 81.9 last year, so I was trying to get close to that, but also.
Yeah, and they're going to play faster, and there's going to be more possessions, and they probably will hit more threes, I would say, as a team than they did last year. So, yeah, I'm going to go over just because of the possessions. There's more firepower. There's more talent. And I think Cadeau's a better shooter. Trimble's a better player. That means more free throws when they're in transition. So, yeah, I think 85 is a good number.
The free throw comment's the sneaky one. I think that's that much more penetration, I think, will probably help those guys a little bit. And plus, you always look at perimeter guys are usually better free throw shooters. Sean, same thing, 84.5.
Man, gonna go slightly under on this one. I think they're going to be games the ACC for the most part doesn't play fast, and there'll be teams that even without Tony Bennett being gone, while UVA might slightly rise. There could be ideally a lot more possessions in general, but I still think there's going to be some games that you could see in the low 60s, whatever it may be, that brings it on down. But that could be offset if they're getting everybody biscuits early on in the season with some of the home games. But last year was surprised when I did see that 81 number, so you would expect it naturally, but going to go slightly under on the 84.5.
All right, Sean, stay here. UNC's opponents will shoot under 39.5% from the field. Last year, they shot a tick over 40, so that's why I'm staying at that 39.5 number. So UNC's opponents will shoot under 39.5% field goals for the coming season.
They will shoot over that, in my opinion, just given from a defensive perspective. It's going to take some time to try to get to where they were last year of keeping their man in front of them and kind of have everybody having that just focus from a defensive effort. I could see the I could see the focus for a lot of the game, but there were situations where Drake Powell trying to get around a screen or Cadeau trying to get around a screen. Once again, then you get to the basket and have our Armando being the anchor, both from a presence perspective and a rebounding perspective. So I'm gonna go over on that one.
Yeah, man, calling out Armando, and I know Sherrell loves to mention this. How good of a defensive player he became last year, I think, was something that's going to pop up about midway through November, December. People were like, "Oh wow, what is UNC missing defensively?" I think he was really underappreciated as an all-ball defender last year. Sherrell, same question. UNC's opponents under or over 39.5 from the field.
I'll go under. I think, again, this is all fueled by their desire to play with pace. I think because they do have some depth, even though this goes counter to what I was saying about Hubert Davis picking his eight guys before, but because they have some depth, they're going to be able to run. And I think defensively, I see some havoc potential, like some old school VCU with putting Drake Powell on the court with Jalen Withers with Seth Trimble. Like that's three really good defenders on the court at the same time, and then it's just a matter of, do you have someone on the back line who can hold up if they are able to get by some of those guys, out on the wing who are pushing up on their guys. So I say all that to say I think they can create some issues with certain defensive lineups. And then I think when you get into that last 10 minutes of the second half, if you've got this Carolina team that's been beeping up and down the court for the first 30 minutes, some of those shots just, you get a little more tired. They start hitting the back rim because you're shooting a little harder. You try to go to the rim and you don't have enough gas to get by people, or you go to the rim and you're not able to finish through contact. So all that to say, I think the combination of how UNC wants to play will keep their opponents under 39.5% shooting this season.
I like the long term rationale you used there. I think it'll be fun for anybody that's listening or watching the show. Note this: it will be interesting to watch this year how many times over the course of the game, or at what point over the course of a game, you see that UNC has the other team's legs. Like that's something where you used to be able to see it even before North Carolina was dictating pace. Like back in some of the really good Roy Williams teams, you could really see when the other team's legs were done. It would be interesting to see how that plays out over the course of the season. All right, last one of the over/under game. I could do this all night, guys, but I know y'all have places to be and things to do, or place people to do, and things whatever. Strike that, reverse it, however you want to call it. Last one, and this is gonna make you do a little math too. UNC will have three or more players average 32 minutes per game or more. Sherrell. And the reason I'm asking this question, I'll let you think about it, so I'll reset this a little bit. The reason I'm asking this question is because, again, we've noticed that Hubert Davis is willing to sometimes ride certain players just into the ground. Don't know that that'll happen with the squad because he's got, theoretically, he's got more legs right now. But will he revert to his kind of Iron 5 days or his leaning on the same trust circle that he's done in the past? And will UNC have three players that average 32 more minutes a game?
I'm going to say no. I'm going to go under and say they're going to have two, which I think will be Cadeau and RJ Davis when push comes to shove. I think Trimble, because of his ability, will be able to take some of those minutes at the three with them and then take some of the minutes as the backup two that maybe would have gone to Ian Jackson or still could go to Ian Jackson. I think with the post rotation, I do believe Jalen Washington has improved, but I think it's going to be a night to night thing. And you just don't want to, just because of his injury history, even though he's been healthy for a while, you just don't want to overtax him. So I think 32 minutes would be a little bit high. And I can't see anyone else who would provide the requisite plays offensively and defensively to play that much. So because of what they provide, I think the top two, Davis and Cadeau, probably will. And I think those will be the only two.
All right, that's fair. I see your mathing. Sean, same question, man. 32 minutes per game amongst three guys.
Gonna agree with Sherrell on this one. I think RJ is a lock for that. I think Cadeau can get there. I think he'll be right on that level in terms of maybe a little over or under. But I don't think I'd say max 30 minutes, similar last year with Cormac and Armando in terms of what they were averaging.
All right, fellas, that was fun. I did make notes. I know who picked what. We don't need to, we don't need to reinvest in literature. Like a great demand from the audience to do so. But what there is a great demand from the audience to do is for us to give our 2 cents, brought to you by Congruity. If you know this show, you know that every week we tell you about how much we appreciate the sponsorship of Congruity, Congruity's HR professionals, and how they can help you and your small or medium sized business. Matt at congruityhr.com. Write that email down. If you run, operate, or own a small or medium sized business, I want you to reach out to Matt. Matt's going to be able to tell you how he can save your company money on your HR, your benefits process, all of your PEO, back office type stuff that really distracts you as an owner or an operator, so that you can focus on the things that actually drive revenue for you. Let them take care of this. They are a locally based company, but they have a national reputation, much like this show. The show's nationally known. There are people in the farthest flung corners of the world that listen to this show. There's people in the farthest flung corners of the world that lean on Congruity HR to help them make their business more efficient and thus more profitable. I want you to give Matt a quick email. I promise if they can't help you, he will tell you they can't help you, and it doesn't cost you anything. It's a free assessment. Check them out. We appreciate them. Right now, we're going to give you our 2 pennies. Sean, give me 1 cent, 1 penny that we can say is brought to you by Congruity HR.
Going back to the freshmen, Drake and Ian Jackson. Once again, I think especially in that first half, you could tell coming off the bench, some jitters, not getting their feet set, and they're going to be concerns and questions and certain aspects of their games as we go forward. But I think for Drake, I mean, there are some things you look at just his height. When he's standing at the free throw line next to everybody, as well as that length that um, nobody on the team is going to be able to do or replicate. And there are going to be moments where you just say, oh my goodness, and get excited, which is why ESPN has him as a top 10 pick in terms of that length and some of the things that he can do that just others can't. And then Ian Jackson was mostly hanging out outside the 3-point line, had some turnovers, but once again, I think the Elons of the world, like the low to mid major games early on, I think will be chances for him to start getting acclimated and getting comfortable, because I think his scoring presence will definitely be needed January through March. But I could see some growing pains at Kansas and some of the other bigger games, but still extremely excited for both of them. Will be interesting to see how they're worked in, especially with Trimble, showcasing his skills, but very excited for the freshmen despite some growing pains that we saw on TV.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Sherrell, you now have the ball, the last seconds to complete this 2 cents. I need you to hit it for me. Give me a penny.
I'm passing it to RJ Davis in that situation.
That's a
anyway,
veteran play. Smart.
It is a veteran play. And, kind of on that point, we're talking about overreactions from the exhibition game. But I shared this with Rob, and I think he mentioned it on the post game, but I want to mention it again. Like, it was fascinating to me that the 3 guys who kind of led UNC in the exhibition game, in Elliot Cadeau, Seth Trimble, and Jalen Washington, were 3 guys who in Carolina's last game against another team couldn't be on the court, for various reasons, whether it was defensive, whether it was confidence, whether it was not really being able to contribute on offense. They all were kind of played off the floor. And if you recall, Elliot Cadeau in the locker room after the game, he was kind of like, I'm just going to do what I need to do so they can't take me off the floor. And I thought it was it was the exhibition, caveat, all that good stuff, caveat over and over and over again. But I thought it was kind of cool for one night that he did exactly what he said he was going to do in the offseason, that Seth Trimble did exactly what they wanted him to do in the offseason. And, we talked to Jalen Washington in August, and his words were, I want to prove to them that I'm that guy. And, for one night, they succeeded. Now, obviously, you have to go and do it 37 or 38 more times. But I just thought that was fascinating. I guess, dichotomy, just putting those two against each other, of their last game in a Carolina uniform against another team in their first game this year, just how different it was.
Yeah, I want to give a shout out to Michelle Cadeau as well. She was pretty excited on social seeing her man or a little boy get a double in that game. It always I always love to see unbridled excitement from parents, and you could tell she was excited about that. And if our fans and our listeners have anything to say about it, they're going to want to see that that happiness as a result of those double doubles many more times this season. Guys, I'm happy because we just wrapped a really good show, and I hope our listeners are happy. If you're not, let us know. Hit us up. I am at Joey at InsideCarolina.com. Shoot us a message on the message boards if there's things you think we could do better. But if you like us, hey, give us a 5-star review. We would appreciate that right there on whatever your podcast platform is. And if you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel, do that as well. Sean, Sherrell, I appreciate you guys being here. Shout out to John Siegley for producing, to Johnny T-Shirt and Congruity for sponsoring. Until next time, I am Joey Powell. This has been the Coast to Coast podcast on InsideCarolina.com.